So the very first thing we're going to do in terms of being agile is get people into groups. Can you hear me? Feels a bit funny. So the wallflowers, wouldn't you like to join a group? We want this to be your workshop. We want you to pick up stickies and try things and contribute ideas. So if you'd like to sit in the groups, in the circles, I think you'd get more value, but hey, it's agile, so if you also want to sit on the side and observe, it's your workshop, right? It's not my workshop, it's your workshop. So if you like to reorganize yourselves, go for it. Right, so right from the beginning, we're going to be overcoming obstacles. I think this is like real world, so I think that probably works for me. It would have been nice to have round tables, so we don't have them. So we're going to have to be agile about it. And I hope you can reach and do things. So a little bit about me briefly. Yeah, I've been in the game a long, long time. It's absolutely not about looking back. What makes my enjoyment and gives me enjoyment in this game is what we change, what we're doing in the future. So KRS has a lot of teams. We develop software for other companies. And my role now is more to getting involved with all the teams. So I see cross-team challenges, how they're dealing with things. Because our clients are usually, they're not in the building, right? We're a software development house. So I very seldom have the luxury of a product owner who's with the team. The product owner is usually with the client. And that also raises a whole lot of challenges. And it's caused us to look at this role a lot. So what I'd like to do is just find out who's in the room, right? Who's a product owner? Cool. I'd like to know who's a Scrum Master. Right. In these groups, we've run this once in Cape Town, and there was a lot of people in a very strange role. I didn't find it anywhere in Agile, but it's apparently called product manager. Any of you? Yes. So corporates are adapting roles. And is there anyone who's more on the development side? Cool. So nice mix, right? So I think each team had some hands that were product owners. Hey guys, join the circles. I'm sure we find you a spot so that you can participate. Now, I have to tell you that we really love product owners. So going back to Kent's fabulous opening keynote, let's keep that kindness thing going, right? In terms of kind things to say about product owners, it is a really, really important role in our minds. And equally, I want to pick it apart today. It's not because I don't like product owners or I don't appreciate the really, really excellent product owners that we work with. It's because it's agile and we should be retrospecting and we should be looking at whether we can do better. So I have opinions on this role because I'm an opinionated whatever, and that's why I get to stand up. But it's actually not about my opinions. What I really want you to take home from this one is what you think you should change. And I think that would be different for everyone. So I'm really hoping this is very hands-on. So bear with me while I set the scene, because as soon as I can, I'm going to get you doing stuff. Okay. I think that we don't really think about the roles enough in Agile. I'll put some contentious thoughts for you there. There's a lot of routine. How many of you do all of the stand-ups? You do all of the meetings and the routine stuff you should do in your teams? Yeah? But what happens when you do stuff habitually? Well, it becomes a habit, and habits are difficult to break. So although we talk about change and thinking about better ways to do it, we're actually so habitualized into what we do that it's quite difficult to break out of that. Okay, so clear the slates, wipe anything off for it, anything else we need to do, and let's have a look at all the parts of the role. So I immediately want to get you working, because that's how you'll get engaged. What I'd like you to do, there's stickies on the tables, limited pens, because I want you to kind of collaborate. So You'll have to get scribes, or you can all start grabbing pens. I don't know. I just want us to define what is a product owner for us. What are all the, and I want you to define it, not in a highfalutin top thing, but in terms of all the jobs your product owner does for you, or you think they should do for you. You can pick both. You can have your dream world or your reality. So long as you discuss it in a group, well, my product owner, wow, manages the backlog. Oh, so what does that mean? They write user stories. Do they work out value? What do they do? At a granular enough level that it isn't just they're a product owner. Would you like to get busy? Because I think busy will get us all woken up a bit. Thank you. You've got 5 minutes to discuss what do your product owners do or should do. Thank you. It's covered more or less the same ground. I assume it's fairly similar. But would you like to just shout out some roles and I'll write them out? This team. Give us one. I can't write and use the mic, right?
Feedback to various stakeholders.
Next team. Give us one. Pick something.
Prioritizes backlog.
Prioritizes backlog. Sorry. Release planning? Release planning. Okay.
Represent client needs.
Hang on. We're good?
Representing the client needs.
Okay. So I'm going to shorten, abbreviate to client needs. Represent, bring forward, all of those things.
Budget.
Budget. I have over here budget. Okay, so there's some budget management. Back.
Measure ROI, budget, business value.
All right, so there's a whole lot of stuff around ROI, business value.
Drive vision.
Yes, vision.
SMEs. Subject matter experts.
Okay. We're going to put that in full, because not everyone will be all use it.
Authority to make final decisions.
Decision making, right?
Acceptance testing.
Okay, I can acceptance tests. Okay, I don't know quite what to. Aligning tasks. Alignment with strategy. Okay.
Roll and sign off of the demos.
Give that to me again. Run.
Roll and sign off of demos.
Okay, sign off demos. Yeah. The reviews, basically.
Prove determine what's valuable.
Okay, value. Is that return on investment? Just not quite the same. Add it.
We've got protect the value, health, and quality of the product. I'm not sure if it's summarized somewhere.
Value. What is it? Health and quality.
Yes.
I'll just do a bit of a brief on that one.
Be available to the team.
Eight. Available to the team.
User story construction.
Yes. User stories. They help manage backlog. I suppose that's prioritize backlog. Yeah, all right. Grooming. That's release. Anything else important? What have we got? Any big ones? So are those client needs being in touch with the users, maybe? Do we have client needs here? Decision making?
Define acceptance criteria of user stories.
Okay, so there's acceptance for tests, there's acceptance for user stories. Acceptance.
Risk or risk owner
Oh, so somebody's got a resourcing role in their product owner. It's a favorite word, isn't it? Would you give in your family, would you refer to a resource? Say, we all hate that particular term. I gave my husband role resource a good night kiss. I'm not picking on you, we're just looking at the agile view of it. It's quite a big role. I'll pick up the mic again. I think that's enough writing. It's a very extensive role in terms of how it's being used. There are strategic elements and there are detail elements. So where I'm coming from here is I think the role's very difficult to fulfill because it's so wide-ranging. And I think that every so often, a team is lucky enough to get a product owner who is just a miracle worker. They do everything. They do all of this stuff. And of course, it makes the devs' lives so easy when that happens. So to take a little bit of a poke at the 17 guys who got together in Utah in 2001, most of them were pretty technical. I mean, if ever there was a technical group, that was it, right? And yes, they came up with the Agile Manifesto. But I think when the role of product owner was talked about, very technical people said what developers have been saying forever. Would someone just tell us what they want? And they said, oh, right, we'll make a role for that. It's called the product owner. And then we've got no more problem. And that's a terrible way to approach it. An absolutely terrible way to approach it. Let me just check on my notes here. So I'm going to put three kind of problems for me on the table, and then I'd like you to get back into the groups and discuss if you see more big challenges with this role. They're the ones I'm going to give to feed the discussion. The first is the type of person who is both a visionary, which for me is incredibly important in my product owner. They must, above all else, drive the direction of the product. That's what it means for me. Oh, hang on. I have written up the official Scrum definition. And now it won't come out. It's somewhere. I think there are competing definitions. I forget which of this is Scrum Alliance, I think. But it's a good definition, so we can go with this. It says a single person must have final authority. So we covered that, decision-making. Representing the customer's interest. Customer needs, what they want, in backlog prioritization. So you guys got that, we covered that. And requirements questions. So we talked about the stories, the acceptance criteria. So the definition is holding true. This person must be available to the team at any time. So we had that as well. Where was it? Subject matter, alignment, available to the team. So you did really well. And how many people know this definition? It's a couple, right? So the theory's there. Okay, so this single person, to me, is a very, very challenging role because we're asking them to have this visionary behavior, the personality that's a big picture thinker. And we're asking them to have the personality that's a detailed thinker. And I think you don't often get that in one person. So my problem is more with all the things we ask of the product owner. So that's number one. I've got three things for you to think about. Can you get a person with detail and big picture in one, and should you? And should you? The second one is the product owner actually has to straddle two big domains. They're very much the user requirements, subject matter expert, understand or at least represent, a lot of business. And then they've got to speak to the devs, the team, the agile team, the techies. So they at least have to speak their language. I'm not saying that a product owner has to be technical, but I know that the best ones actually do understand the problems of the development team. Okay, you can challenge me on that. When we did this workshop in Cape Town, I got a lot of naysayers on that point. They were like, product owners don't have to know tech. Okay, so I'm not saying you have to be technical, but I do believe you straddle both domains. In the definition of the product owner. Well, it's a challenge, right? It's just asking more of this superhuman, this very special superhuman, our unicorn in my title. Okay, so think about it, and you can agree or not, but I believe they have to straddle both, business and tech. And then the last one, in my high-level challenges of this role, why we're asking so much, is about reach. A good product owner has authority to make decisions. That means they have at least like maybe C-level support for this product. They must have some fairly senior authority that they arrive with. So if it's a smaller company, sure, it's easier. It might be the owner's view and vision, or in a corporate, you must have that authority. So you're pretty high up. But when you come to the user, the person who uses the thing, it's going to be maybe someone in the bottom end of the clerical staff. So you have to be able to communicate effectively across an entire organization to be good. I mean, you cannot do it, but would you be as good a product owner? Implicit in the role, we're asking for someone who can get involved in the detail and talk to users and then go and sit in a board meeting and get approval and go ahead for our vision, I think. Right, so I'm leaving you with those three problems. And I'd like to see if you've got more. Now I'm asking you to think about this. What is it that we've done in defining this role to really make it so difficult to find this particular personality? As a little example, play out in your mind the job spec. I am looking for a visionary person with a detail orientation who's well-versed in my business and a deep understanding of web systems. And can you imagine it? It's quite a... So play that out and see which other big picture challenges you think are implicit in the role, and I'll let some conversation bubble up again, and then we'll get some feedback. Okay. Is there any team that would like to contribute an additional idea? I'll start in the front.
So we have we're not all necessarily in full agreement on it, but we have kind of a question going around in terms of how we're defining it there. So if you were to look at it from holding, Aslam made a very good point in that if you looked at them as the person that ensures that the string of the Y is protected and updated and informed and conveyed appropriately, then the role is, achievable and great. If you looked at it from the list we've created, you could debate a few of them, or looked at the definition, then the question comes is this practical? We talk sustainability, is that sustainable for a single person? Is it even achievable for a single person? And then if we talk like collaboration, does it achieve ultimate collaboration if you're wanting to communicate directly with clients, etc.? And then also feedback loops, like are our feedback loops direct or are they going through another gateway effectively? So is this a practical and agile role as it is stated, or should it be changing because, maybe it's not so good?
I've put up a couple of nice words that you've used there about is it achievable, is sustainable, and a favorite of mine, gateway, because I'd like to revisit that one as well. Let's just get some more ideas surfaced, and then we can talk about them some more.
We had a good discussion around the first two, which is more about workload. Can one person do all of this stuff? And just being practical around it. So we said a few things, product owner is a full-time job. We had a discussion whether a product owner can have more than one product or support more than one team. Those are just some of the ideas.
Okay. I think those are specific choices, right? I mean, they're not intrinsic challenges of the job that you've got to have more than one product, or So I'm still kind of looking for the intrinsic challenges in how we've defined this role.
We've had mixed implementations of the product owner at our various teams with levels of success, I suppose. I think on the one extreme, we've got traditional business analysts that we've tried to fit into the product owner role, and we find that some of the consequences of that is they lack the authority, they're not close enough to the business, there's still a traditional requirements gathering role that they play, so they don't understand the business well enough to make the decisions, but they go and do that requirements gathering. What we found worked quite well is where the role of the product owner was played by somebody from the business. But there seem to be complementary roles where different people supported the product owner in various ways. So we've had what's called a shit umbrella, I think in one case.
Should I write up shit umbrella? Let's hear.
Help the product owner represent certain things at Steerco's, for example. You've got then business analysts in other cases who help the product owner do the more detailed type of work, and the product owner deals with strategic. So it sounds like there's complementary roles that's coming up to help the product owner fulfill that responsibility.
So that sounds like a really good discussion. I'm going to pick up on that. I'm going to sum it up as coping mechanisms. What I think we do is when it gets difficult, we cope, all right? And the reason that the role works at all is that most of our teams have got some form of coping mechanism. If a product owner is not able to do some part of the role, they're coping by someone else picking it up, someone assisting, someone doing something. It's a coping mechanism. So that's helping to sustain our fairly false idea that the role works. Are there any ones at the back that wanted to add?
So there's an interesting situation where we work across natures, and people who form the team are corporate-wise all sitting at the same level from a authority perspective or role perspective. So the product, because they're the same level of the product owner, they don't respect the product owner as an authority. And they go back to their respective managers and complain about the product owner, and then their respective managers tell them they don't have to listen to the product owner.
Where do I even start? My deepest condolences to your product owner. Okay, let me put some more thoughts out for you. The gatekeeper term, I think, is a really important one to me. Everything we do in Scrum, certainly, is about the team, isn't it? And whose role is it to move the stuff on the backlog, in the daily stand-up, whether you use electronic board, you still have stickies? Whose responsibility is it to move it? Is it the Scrum Masters? No, it's the teams. Right. So why in everything else that we do we have a team, and then suddenly we have a single person is responsible for all these things? We have completely broken down our collaboration. We have created a bottleneck, a gatekeeper, a single role. Now we cope with it by all getting involved. In the best teams, you either have a miracle worker, right? You have one of those product owners who has the authority, who has the depth of experience across all the domains. You have one of those miracle workers. Or you have people trying their best and they're coping and the team is stepping into bits. So I just feel that we should acknowledge our coping mechanisms and have a different approach to the role. But yeah, we have this single person, so we've lost the team. Now, another unintended consequence in my view, and I do believe it's unintended, okay? I think all of these things were set out and spec'd with the best intentions in the world, right? I mean, they wanted it to succeed. But an unintended consequence of the product owner role has been, I think, a lot of teams, the developers have withdrawn from the user. Now, I'm not saying they should have, absolutely not, but I think many teams did. So let me get a temperature reading, so I'm not standing up here and talking complete and utter bullshit to you. Have you got development teams who are fairly isolated and tend to stay in their little office and don't talk to the users a lot? Who's got some of those? Okay, so it's kind of widespreadish, right? It is, a lot of developers are introverts. Okay, I'm a terrible introvert as well. I have to get the energy, to come and speak to people. And a lot of developers are like that. I mean, I was a developer many years ago. So if we leave them and they have somebody to transfer the responsibility to, because that's what they do, is they're like, the story has to be ready to dev. Have you got ready to dev in your teams? Okay, so it must come fully prepped, shiny, packaged in the box, and then we'll work with it. I think that's a bad attitude for a lot of scenarios. When you have a user, I take something from Lean Startup. Lean Startup for entrepreneurs says, you must take your idea and go try it out with a real user. You've got to get out the building as early as possible. So you want to sell this brand, you've got the new social media that's going to take down Facebook or whatever it is. Well, hell, go and sell it to someone and see if they want to buy it as early as possible. You know all of that. Minimum viable product. Right? Those are the concepts from Lean Startup. Do I need to explain MVP? Is that all right? So what's the least we can do to test and get feedback? So implicit in that whole Lean Startup thing is this idea of get out the building. So where do you get your feedback? You go to a real user. But now we've got barriers. We've got to go to our product owner, who'll go to a manager, who might go to a user, or are we getting to the real coal face? Somebody asked a question in the keynote thing about they don't even speak to the nurses they're writing systems for. And I'm like, oh, okay, haven't we learned anything? So even if it's as simple as we're going to do some changes for the finance department, the most boring corporate whatever, well, go sit with a person who's got to use your screen and find out why they're so frustrated because you made them click 3 times to get the thing they wanted in. And I know we parcel that off as UX, which is another topic. Surely it's part of the developer's job to produce a usable something, piece of code. You know why that one got parceled into somebody else's job? Why must we do lots of small releases? Get feedback. And because it's hard, right? Releases are hard, so you should do more of them. Have you all heard that phrase? We used to have months and months and months of development and then a big bang deployment, okay? And that was so hard. So they said, we'll do more of them. And it gets easier. Okay. So the more our users get out and speak to people, the easier it gets. So you might have a bunch of introverts. I lost the track on that a bit. Let me take you back to why I talked about that. Sorry. My thoughts run. You have these people who would like to sit at their screens with do not disturb signs on their head. Okay, so because it's hard to speak to users, they should speak to users more. Does that make sense? So if you take anything from this, it's to drive your developers out. To say, okay, so you've done your planning, and who did you speak to? Who did you go and check your plans with? How many banking system people here? I don't even care which bank you're from. I can tell you I hate your system. Is there any web internet banking system that anyone likes? Because us as the user are seldom asked what we actually want. And, it's always a nice cheap shot. I'm sorry about that. But we all know the systems we don't like. So we're actually usually part of them at some level. Right, what do I want you to do next? Let me see if I've covered all my points. Get out the building, devs isolate. Why do we not have teams that help our product owner? Why is it not a team function? So my challenge to you now is to take all those stickies you did originally, and you can add to them if you heard some more good stuff. I'll put that page back down if you want. Go and have a look at how you could apportion it to other people in the team. I don't want to prompt too much, but somebody mentioned a business analyst. There is no business analyst defined in Scrum, and I often wonder why. Because I think that personality, that real understanding of what actually business wants is still a valuable skill. I still say the devs need to learn how to do more of this, and we've got to blur some lines. But we've lost some roles, and I think we may be poorer for it. So would you introduce more roles? Would you, instead of saying this is a person, let's look at what a product owner gives us and say who should be doing it, and it's not one person. Would you like to try that? Take your stickies and have a look at how you might apportion them and where you might create new roles. How you turn it into a team thing that is collaborative. Go for it. I guess I would hope a number of teams talked about user stories, because I think that's one of the more easy ones to kind of box and to look where we're doing. Would anyone like to contribute anything that was interesting or unexpected to them in the discussion? Did you come up with a change of role that you personally intend to implement? Speak up.
So the thing that stuck out to me was that we spent a lot of time talking about role and structure, and the question that I'm posing is, we spend so much effort focusing on that. Perhaps we should be focusing on this is what we want to achieve. These are the skills we have available and how we're going to achieve them, instead of this is defining a role.
Did everyone hear that? We're saying we have skills in our teams, and how do we best use them, rather than saying these are the roles we must fulfill. I'll put a few thoughts on that one, as if it's a question. You still do need to do certain things. So there is a need for a vision. You know, whether we have a strategic thinker or not in our team, we have a need for a vision. So we do, I think, need a definition of some of the roles or the skills we would like to have. It might not be a role then, it might be skills we'd like to have, so that we can grow those skills in the team and help in some way to develop more of them. If what we need to do is develop more communication skills from our developers, then we must identify that and work towards building it, not just say, oh, we have a bunch of people with low communication skills, so we won't use them in communication roles. And that is the problem sometimes with playing to your strengths, is you will end up with silos. You'll end up with the loudmouth will just take on certain things in the team, or the one person who knows how to set up the CI server will always set it up. And I'm quite cautious about the playing to skills unless you're bringing other people up to those skills.
Perhaps maybe I can clarify a little bit. Not just on the strength side, but just the difference between defining roles as opposed to focusing on what it is we need to achieve and what we need to be able to do to achieve that.
Thank you. Anyone else going to change something in their teams? Or some experiment you'd like to try? Something you're going to move a role?
I want to ask a question. Should a product owner be a team leader?
Ooh. So many non-agile terms. I know. Yeah, Kennedy and I were chatting about all these things. When you start looking at the product owner role, next thing you're actually debating the Scrum Master role, and then you're debating, who reports to who, and it kind of quickly turns into a discussion about all the roles. And as you say, we need to keep in focus what we're trying to achieve. It is. We really would love it if we had a flat structure in our teams, because then you have a level of diversity, equal voices. You're really benefiting from all of the skills in your team. The reality is that often you've got quite young teams, so a natural leader emerges. So we can talk about things like a team leader. Even my preference, though, is that it's a natural leader, not a leader by authority. Yeah, I think the more we could get away from the control and command mindsets that got us into so much trouble. A little thing I often say is I think that we and I'm in broad brush, right? Not individually, but often in especially the business world, grown-up people with things to contribute are treated like children. As soon as you need a manager, is that because someone has to tell you what to do? Is that the mindset? That we got to report to our manager because someone's going to tell us what to do? So I look at people and over many years in all sorts of different teams. Um, there are people who at work are barely turned on. They're just there, right? 8 to 5, ciao. 5:01, goodbye. And then you hear what they do on the weekend, and they're involved in the community, and they maybe do work for the church, or they've got sports, and it turns out they're this fantastic soccer player, or they're whatever it is. And they're so turned on because they got to decide. It is human nature to need more ownership of our lives. And we're screwing that up in the business world because we want to make sure everyone fits in their little box and then they do only what they're told to do. And Agile has such potential to make us love our work. That's the thing for me. It actually helps me to love my work. But we've got to get away from the manager mindsets, and it's very difficult. I understand it's difficult when you've got 1,000 employees or whatever the number is. The urge to make hierarchical structures and start controlling stuff is apparently one that most corporates are absolutely unable to drop. Am I wrong? So trust. And I don't want to have a manager, and if a team leader exists, it's not the PO, because then you've decided it, and they might not be a good leader.
Yeah, so I think along those lines, we had an interesting discussion around decision making, whether that still resides with the PO or with the team, because we're mixed in between to go and say, actually, it is still with the PO, but I mean, if we hear what was said earlier about aligning authority and responsibilities, if you leave that up a level, then potentially the team can go and fail with absolutely no responsibility because they weren't involved in the decision-making process. So I think, me personally, it wasn't maybe a whole team discussion, but me personally, I think even that decision-making can be pushed at a lower level with the team.
Hendrik, I love that. We often talk about business IT alignment, right? And yet almost all of our systems are designed for business to tell IT. Down, okay? Where is the IT building and assisting and suggesting? And because we live in a technological age, and the biggest shifts have come when someone has come up with something innovative, a new use of technology, an application to business that isn't just the same old, same old. And how many teams feel they have any voice at all in helping to define the product? This is not about now running off at tangents, but are we getting all that valuable input that I believe sits around every single table? Are we actually getting it? Are our businesses getting it? Or is it one way? So much of the product owner role encourages one-way communication. The product owner will decide on the release planning. Well, hopefully, and the team. But it can turn into a down. It's coming down, and then we're back to we're being treated like children, and we're being told to, just draw the circle and paint it blue. And what if we said to him, but you could have had a sphere, and it could do things. Because we understand what we can do with our tech, or the devs do, or somebody's there. So I love your question, because I don't think that we're harnessing in any way the creativity of our teams. Because they're not frontline, they're not close enough to the user to be seeing the problems to say, oh, but we could just change that. Have you not had that discussion where you actually saw how someone was using and you were like, why didn't I know this? It would take me 5 minutes to fix it for you. Apparently, you've been making this spreadsheet for 3 years where you resort it so that you can get the field that's going to go in the top right-hand corner. Have you got users like that? It's because we don't know. So, get close to your user and contribute. Give them suggestions. We could do this. But, of course, then you have to have this kind of management that allows that kind of scope and can change your backlog. So, which also leads me to tech debt. You thought it was talk about product owners. Does the product owner, they manage the backlog, they prioritize it. Where do they prioritize tech debt? Shall I define tech debt for us all? Let's just talk it through. When you're developing a system, you make decisions. All of us. Whether you're doing a design for the front end, or you're doing some technical stuff in the back end, or you're developing, setting up the database, you're making decisions. You make lots and lots of little technical decisions as you work. And when you look back on them, you go, oh my goodness, I could have done that better. Right? You weren't stupid. Well, sometimes someone might not have had the skills at the time, but let's take the kind approach. We mostly made the best decisions we could with the information at hand, and now we've got 20/20 vision. And man, it's a hell of a lot clearer. So your systems are full of these little things that now we see could be better. They're full of it, all of us. If you don't think so, you need to go talk to some devs. Most of us hide it. And we put a Band-Aid on, and then the user wants this new feature now, and that's, no, my structure's not right. But you know what, if I use this column for two uses, and I put you know the crap that goes on. And in my wild youth, I used to ride motorbikes, and we used to refer to rat bikes. And they were things that were held together by duct tape and draht. You see, and our systems become rat bikes over time, with all the best intentions. So who puts the tech debt on? The other thing about tech debt, and this is why it's got the term debt, you actually pay interest for having it. Because now every time you want to make a little change, bring in a new feature, there are things that have to be worked around. So they're not ideal. So you're paying interest. You're paying interest in longer time to get the story out. You're paying interest in not being as efficient as you can be. That's why it's called tech debt. Right? And sometimes the debt is so cheap that you keep the debt. And sometimes it's costing so much that you really should deal with it. Okay. And those are decisions that need to be surfaced and need to be honest conversations with the product. That's why the product owner has to have a foot in the tech camp. They have to be able to understand what it's costing them in interest payments for their tech debt. And no one was bad, right? No one was stupid to get here. It is an innate thing of developing something for the first time ever that in the little decisions you made, they weren't perfect. Right, so who puts it on the backlog? Do you guys have teams that honestly talk about your tech debt and deal with it?
But we use the cost of service for intangibles, and we kind of had an agreement with the product owner because she's not as technical, but to kind of make her understand with cost of today what these intangibles would mean to the team. So we actually made her at her level to say, because she doesn't understand the technical part of it, but what is it going to cost us in the long run? What is the cost of the delay of these intangible stories? So then we created policies within our team to say that on average, if we have this amount of standard stories and whatnot, you have to have a percentage of intangible as well.
Okay, so a coping mechanism is to have a dribble of it being dealt with every sprint. It doesn't necessarily mean you're actually doing ROI, right? Because maybe you didn't need to pay it down, and maybe it was really more urgent than that. That's just a thing about these roles. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the strategy. Were there any other contributors that this last discussion? Any other roles you're really going to change back in your teams, or big questions? Okay, then let me talk about my organizational reach topic, because we've left that alone for a while now. We've talked about detail and vision for a long time. And you remember in my 3 things, one was, can you be at like an executive level to get the authority to make the decisions, and at the user level? We in our definition say that a person, the product owner, must be available to the team at any time. Right. So what you have to do is someone pretty much dedicated. And sometimes companies don't have a dedicated role. There might be someone in the business who really knows it well, and they're a product owner on the side. Have you got some of those? Okay. And they're really busy, right? They can't always get to you. They're really not there at any time. They do their best. Okay. But at least they're a subject matter expert. And often, because they are a little more senior, they might have the authority to make decisions. So that's useful. Like short-circuit some stuff. Otherwise, you might have a full-time product owner who's actually a proxy for the really busy person. Have you got some of those? So the product owner, and one team asked about that, the product owners at the same level as the team. So they haven't got more authority, they haven't got maybe more insight, they haven't got more subject matter expertise. And it's because we need this person all the time. So if our definition changed to say there are key times when we needed the person, could we not have access to a more strategic person? Because I'd rather have the real product owner than a proxy. Right. So I see some nods. I feel like, yeah, obviously I wanted to get some discussion going, but I feel like to some extent I'm doing too much telling you my view. I do like to stir. So if you please take it all as stirring. And I would quite like to see the teams just have a last chat about, okay, come on, what would you change? What are you going to take back to your teams and change? What have you got out of this that you're going to actually take back to your teams and change? And I mean, if you wanted to even change groups so that you get some different opinions and we all shuffled around, and you had a last chat about what would you change? And then we'll summarize and go for lunch, I think. Is that what happens next? No, is there another session and then lunch? Right. I'm overly optimistic. Why don't we do a bit of a shuffle so we have some different conversations, and the focus is what would you really like to take back and change in your own team? Quite promptly, I'd like to summarize, and everyone can move to their sessions, and we don't want to run late. I really hope you have found something that you're going to take back to your teams. I don't want to know what it is. I hope everyone has got their own thing out of this. So I'm going to take the luxury now of a final, my view, moment or two, and suggest the following for you. That if we go back to our definition, the way I would love to change it is as follows. Yeah, a single person when it comes to the vision. I mean, you can't always have everything done by committee, because then, you know, they say a camel is a horse designed by committee or whatever it is. So there are times when you need somebody with a vision, and I'm okay with that. Okay. I'd like them supported and able to discuss, but a single person's okay. Have final authority, representing the customer's interest in backlog priority. So what is important to us? What I don't like is this. I think once we start stepping into the requirements area, it gets much, much too detailed. And that puts a load on it, which means that we end up with proxy people to come and do it because the real strategic person hasn't the time. So I think that's the first level of failure that's built into the definition. And I just take that out, right? And then the other one is the person must be available to the team at key points. Sorry, my pen's just died on me. And I think that, for me, gives a limited definition with just enough flexibility, and we get the value out of the role, and we don't have quite as much demand on it. So consider that, if it's of use to you. There are two things that I hope you try at some point, and I know some structures are difficult. You're going to go back to teams, and you might think this was really interesting to want to play with the roles, and you haven't got authority to change things. Understanding all of that. But if there are two things you can do for me, the one would be get your devs talking to users. Drive them out. Make sure that your team, whoever it is, your Scrum Master, your team, your developers, your team is talking to users and feeling their pain. If you send out a build and there are problems in it, and the dev has to go and sit with the user to find out what went wrong, the next time round, because they felt the pain, right? You've aligned that thing of, I did something and the consequences were. And while they can hide in the back room and the product owner has to deal with it all, and there's like, it's not aligned. So if you can at all do that for me, it would be really nice. I'm sure that doesn't need much management change. It just needs talking to your team and a little bit of, let's try this. Let's try and talk to people more. And the other one was, if at all possible, and this is the big one, which is going to need more organizational agreement, is if you can get your company to have product owners who are not proxies for the product owner. They are actually the person with the decision-making capability. And you can explain how important it is to have that person with the vision and the authority to make decisions. Wow, that would be a big, big win, I think. So I hope you enjoyed that. And my Twitter handle is at law_KRS. I'll put that up. And feel free to tweet me some ideas and keep the conversation going, please. Thank you very much.